You're listening to Table Talk with Toddy, the podcast where we have real talk about life and business as a creative living in the 21st century. I'm your host, Natasha Toddy Weston. Let's get into it. Hey family, welcome back to the Table Talk with Toddy podcast. I am your host, Natasha Toddy Weston, and y'all, it has taken me about a month to pull this microphone out and actually just go ahead and record this episode. As a matter of fact, I have on the notes that I started but never finished, September 12th. Today is actually October 26th, 2023. And I think it's important that I share the date in this particular episode for so many reasons, which we will get into here in a moment. First things first, thank you guys so much for streaming old episodes all this time. I had someone reach out to me a few weeks ago and shared in very lengthy form how much they're enjoying like episodes 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. And I'm like, what? People still listening to that? I mean, I can remember when I started this podcast in 2016, and I literally knew I wanted to do a podcast. Podcasting was still very, very new. I mean, I think it still is on the grand scheme of things. But when I say new, like I didn't know anybody that had a podcast. The person that had inspired me to have a podcast was Miley Teal. Like that's who was podcasting back then. And so I knew I didn't have the equipment. I was broke, y'all. Like broke. Tyler was like 2 and we were in a 1-bedroom apartment. And so I just didn't have the money to buy a microphone and actually invest in podcasting like I would have liked to. But everything happens for a reason. But anyway, I say all of that to say that I had already had a name for the podcast and everything. And I was like, I'm not going to sit on this idea. I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. But I was still kind of in my head about the whole equipment thing. And I think a lot of people do get stuck there. But I didn't. What I decided to do was take some old audio that I had recorded myself talking in the car on the way to my bank job back in the day. And, ooh, Lord, if you know anything about Charleston, y'all know how that 526 bump goes. You can tell where a person is when they're on 526. That's a highway in Charleston. And I'm sure you could hear it all up and through that audio. But I put that out as one of my first episodes. And it's been literally going since then. 7 years I have been podcasting. And it has been a great 7 years. You guys have supported this show when I forgot about it, when I didn't want to do it, when I would start it, stop it, all of the above. And we finally made it through 7 years. A lot of people can't say that, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and give myself my own flowers in this moment and lead myself into, I guess, an announcement, which some of you will probably hear because of the announcement I had already made a while back. But this is the end of the Table Talk with Toddy podcast. It has been an amazing 7 years, but I've known for quite some time that it's time to end it. And I want to get into why I'm ending the podcast and how important it is to know when it's time to end something, when it's time to let go, when it is okay to change your mind. And I think that my experience and my story of ending this podcast hopefully will help you as you're listening or transitioning through anything in life. It doesn't even have to be like ending a podcast or ending a business or anything like that. And so when I originally announced that I was ending the podcast, I got a lot of really good feedback. And that made me feel good, of course. But I just want to be very clear that I didn't need the confirmation from anyone. I had already gotten the confirmation a whole long time ago that it was time to end the podcast. But I did not want to. It was a very hard decision. It's like my baby. You know, this has been my communication channel with you guys for 7 years. This has been my go-to. And it has been an amazing 7 years. And I know I keep saying that, but I am so serious about that I'm so appreciative for being one of the first to have a podcast, and for all of the charts that we've been on, and for all of the recognition that we've gotten, and the doors that have been opened through this, and the lives that have been changed, or the people that have been enlightened through my voice and through the conversations that I've had here on the show, whether it was through a solo episode or with any of our amazing guests. So anyway, when I put the announcement out, I originally had the idea to do like a reunion style ends of an era type of episode series. And that did not work out the way that I played it out in my head. Y'all know how that is. And so my goal when I started this podcast 7 years ago was to at least make it to 100 episodes. And looky, we are almost there. And so I want to do a 3-part conversation by myself because there are no guests. And we're going to call this the end of an era. I just simply want to talk to you guys about my decision to end the podcast. And ultimately, I want you to be able to take away some lessons and some ideas and new thoughts that maybe you haven't thought about yet when it comes to ending things. And especially things in business and things that have been like your passion projects and your baby. And this podcast has been my baby, so it's really hard for me to say bye. But I realize that this is just not a goodbye, but this is just the end of a chapter in my book called Life. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start with the fact that I made notes, but this, I just want to let it flow from my heart because this is so hard for me to do. And I'm just hopeful that someone out there somewhere is able to take away from it. Let me just start by saying that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Everything living has a beginning, a middle, and an end. When you think about our kids, especially those of us who have kids, we raise them up, we pour into them, we feed them, we nurture them, and then at some point, whether we like it or not, and most of the time we don't, they have to grow up and leave home, right? And from there, we have to trust that whether they go to college or whether they're in the military or whether they decide to start a business, that we've sown the right seeds into them that will position them to be positive, healthy humans. And that is how I looked at the decision to end Table Talk with Tati. I'm confident, very confident at this point in my life that this show has touched who it was intended to reach, and my mission and message with the show is completed. I'm always the one preaching to you guys that it is good to read your story to the world, but don't forget to flip the page. I don't know anybody that reads and stays on the same page over and over and over and over and over again. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you drift off and you find yourself having to read the same paragraphs and same pages over and over again. That's how I have been feeling this year about the podcast, and that kind of drove me into my decision. I had already been praying about it, and God had already been telling me and showing me what my pivot would look like. But because this podcast has been my baby, I wasn't willing to accept it for a long time, and I stalled. And then it hit me that I've been podcasting for 7 years. I've had this show for 7 years. 7 is the year of completion. And that, my friends, was for sure confirmation on me deciding to end the podcast. And so earlier this year, I was super consistent. I did the whole repurposing thing. I did a whole episode about how I was able to take old content from old interviews, old courses, and chop them up into content in episodes for the podcast. And I did that with the intention of rebuilding my audience because I had ghosted the podcast for a year. And I wanted to basically get back in people's lives, get back in people's ears, get them back familiar with my posting schedule because I had planned on launching a whole new season. And as soon as I got to the end of my little pre-launch revive of a podcast campaign, if you will, God was like, that's it with this. And it's funny how life works. Things just start happening. Life just started life and I wasn't able to even sit down and creatively think about what direction I wanted to go in with new episodes. And I still did not want to let it go. And at that point, every time I added brainstorm ideas for podcasts, it started to feel forced. And this is also how I knew that it was time to end the podcast. And ultimately, you guys, I just had to get real with myself and say, what's the point of having something if it's not being effective? And not effective for others, but if I don't enjoy doing it anymore, if I don't enjoy doing what I'm doing anymore, then it's really not going to have the impact that it needs or should have. And so I had to give myself permission to say, okay, Natasha, it's all right to change your mind, girl. Like, you don't have to keep dragging this out because it's something that you started. Because you hear people say, finish what you start. Well, 7 years, I think, is a a long time to say that I started and completed something, right? And so I had to give myself permission to change my mind and to know that the mission was accomplished, the goals were set and reached, and that the show made the impact that it needed and was intended to create. So when I created this podcast, I wanted to basically focus on creatives and entrepreneurs. I shared a lot of my ups and downs, highs and lows of my journey as an entrepreneur over the last decade plus. And I have had conversations with amazing men and women about their journeys and their stories as life as a creative living in the 21st century. But if I'm going to keep it all the way a buck with y'all, I'm tired of only talking about business. There you have it. That's the truth about another reason why I'm ending the podcast. No, I'm not saying that I'll never talk about business and entrepreneurship and branding and marketing again, but that is not my ministry right now. And I have to trust God to continue to lead me into the conversations that He's been allowing me to have. And y'all, the conversations I'm having right now in life just have to have more meaning. I know this might sound contradicting because of all of the times I've preached, be about your business, be about your bag. But baby, that bag and that business don't mean nothing if your mental health is not intact. That bag and that business means nothing if your conversations are not impacting your family and your friends. That bag and that business means nothing if your actions are not helping to change the world. And that is where I'm at in life right now. And I need all of my creative passion, money-making projects to align with me in this season.